Let's move on to our second and main topic today, shall we? And our second and main topic today gets submitted to us by our friend James. And James writes, well, a double whammy. Just hours after your Friday show, No Time to Die was delayed till next April. Then, this weekend, as a result, according to Variety, Cineworld has decided to close all their Regal Cinemas in the U.S., U.K, and Ireland this week. This is a bad sign in my opinion. Do you think AMC will follow suit? And what are the odds Warner Brothers just moves Wonder Woman 84 and Dune into next year in response? All right. This has been the story for the last 48 hours, whatever. It has been the story. Now, of course, on Friday's show, as Rob and I alluded to, we were talking about the fact that they had released the Billie Eilish official music video for James Bond, No Time to Die. And what that led us to believe was that, hey, they could move it still, but I think as of right now, they probably haven't made that decision to move it. Well, they had, because just an hour later, the news officially broke that they were moving it into 2021. And again, I don't blame them for that. I really don't. It's hard to blame them for doing that because right now everybody's just trying to figure out. There's no playbook right now, right? We've talked about this before. There's no blueprint. There's no precedent. This hasn't happened before. There's this movie theater industry trying to exist and movie studio industry trying to exist within a pandemic has not happened before, where we today can then look back and learn from the lessons of the past. Everybody's just trying to figure it out. So I don't blame them for moving it. But very shortly after they moved it, came word that Cineworld and the chain that they own as well in Regal was going to close all their theaters again. Now, Rob, I don't know if you remember, but back a couple of weeks ago, when it got announced that Black Widow was getting moved, I said on this show, just look for the movie theaters are going to close down again. The movie theaters are going to have to close down again because the plan was get them open in time for Tenet, and then you could build some momentum from there, then get another big movie, and then get another big movie, and that'll get things going. But with Tenet coming out and then being an island unto itself and nothing else coming out to support it, we've seen that go down. The pandemic has had its own nature, of course. Then all the other movies have moved. And I said, you can't keep the movie theaters open if you got nothing to attract the audiences in with. You're losing more money by being open than if you just close the doors and turn off the lights, right? Yeah. And so then the day after that, we heard a representative from, what's the name of the company again? Oh yeah, NATO, the North American Theater Owners, or the National Association of Theater Owners. The NATO rep came out and said, yeah, we're probably going to see these things come down. And then after James Bond moves on Friday, we hear this report. Now, Cineworld then did come out and put out a statement and said, we haven't officially decided to close everything down, but we are seriously considering it. It is official. It is official now. Regal, Cineworld have put out the notice. They have publicly made the announcement that as of this coming Thursday, at the end of business on Thursday, they are shutting all their theaters down. And they specifically point to the fact that they've got no big movies coming right now. And without the big movies to attract audiences to the theaters, to get them turned on to the other, maybe smaller movies, there's just no point for them staying open. This comes to us from Variety, who writes, Cineworld could shutter 543 of its Regal Cinema venues in the United States and all cinemas across the UK and Ireland this coming week. And it is official now, by the way. Just a day after the James Bond film No Time to Die was pushed to April of 2021. It, of course, was supposed to open in November. On Sunday afternoon UK time, Cineworld confirmed that it is considering the temporary closure of its US and cinemas. Again, this is now official. They have now come out in the last 24 hours and confirmed they are doing this, so it's now done. Of its UK and US cinemas, but that a final decision hasn't been reached yet. It, of course, has been now. Variety understands that staff were informed of Cineworld's plan on Sunday ahead of the company's statement, with HR explaining that the closure of all cinemas is one option that is strongly being considered, though a decision hasn't yet been made. And once again, just to be clear, the decision has been made. They have, in the last 24 hours, put out statements to say, we have decided, end of business Thursday, we're shutting everything down again. This raises a couple of questions. First of all, was this the right thing for Cineworld to do? Yes. This is absolutely the right thing for Cineworld to do. Because what I've been saying for a while is this. Movie theaters will be fine. The movie theaters will be fine. They will recover and all this kind of stuff if, and this is the huge if they can survive until the movies start coming out again. Now, Rob and I talked about the Empire Strikes Back analogy to this. It's kind of like, yes, Han Solo will be fine in the carbonite. He'll be fine. But as 3PO said, if he survives the freezing process, that's the big here. If the theaters can survive until the movies start coming out again, they'll be fine. With that in mind, places like Cineworld, who opened back up under the hope that we were going to start to get a string of movies being released after Tenet, they have now got to go into survival mode. And the best way for them to go into survival mode is just to turn off the lights and lock the doors for now and conserve their assets, conserve their finances, conserve their liquidity, if you will. Make sure that they are in a good position to survive, hibernate, if you will, until the movies start coming out again. And now, as far as the question about will AMC follow suit, I have zero doubt. I haven't heard from anybody, Rob, saying that AMC is looking at doing this, but they have to. They have to. They have no movies coming out. You cannot keep the lights on, and you cannot keep paying staff and janitorial and bills and all that kind of stuff when you aren't getting enough people in the doors to meet that expense. You're losing money faster by being open than if you just close the doors. So they're going to have to go into hibernation mode too until this happens. Could they be back open in December? It's possible. Rob, you and I were just talking about Free Guy, about whether or not Free Guy will actually open on December 11th. I don't think it will, but it's still possible. That we're still talking about something that is a couple of months away. And as you and I have pointed out several times, Rob, this pandemic thing is causing the rules to change day by day. Like every day, the situation changes, right? So it's possible the December films could still come out. It's possible. I don't feel very optimistic about that, but it is possible that Dune could still come out, that Free Guy still could come out on December 11th, because again, just because the situation is changing every 24 hours rapidly, and it's still 2 months away, I don't feel very enthusiastic about it. But Rob, I'm going to tell you one other thing. And this is the part that frustrates me. Right now, we are now in a situation where what Tenet did to come out first, to be that first penguin in the water, to try to be the thing to spark the rejuvenating of the movie industry again, it was basically all for nothing. Because in order for Tenet doing what it did to work, meant that other films later would have to come out to take advantage of and carry on that momentum. And without any other movies now coming out after it, it literally meant at the end of the day, Tenet, despite its valiant effort, it really did it for nothing. It was all for naught. And now we're back to square one. A big part of that is, of course, because a lot of places still won't open movie theaters. New York State is a big example of that. You open gyms and restaurants and every other type of public place, but not movie theaters. Really? Bowling alleys? You opened, but not movie theaters. And here's the part where it really becomes frustrating to me, Rob, is that I've said, and most people have said, that look, you can't step outside your door unless you're wearing a hazmat suit and not understand you are in some risk of contracting the virus. Whenever you step outside your door, there's a risk. The idea is we do smart things to minimize the risk. Don't get into big public gatherings. Make sure you're washing your hands. Wear the damn masks. Do all the things you need to do. Do the smart things. And Rob, I've been to the movie theaters twice in the past while. And each time I have gone, I have felt like they have gone above and beyond to make sure it is as risk reduced as possible. Big social distancing. They minimized how many people could be in the theater. They required the mask, tons of hand sanitizer over. They made me feel very secure. And here's the part that frustrates me. The head of NATO, again, the National Association of Theater Owners pointed out a statistic that just frustrates me even more. When they pointed out this, he was asked, have there been any cases of coronavirus that have been linked to people going to the movies? Because the movie theaters have been, a lot of movie theaters in the world have been open, Rob. A lot of them have been open.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so they asked them point blank, have there been any cases of corona that have been verified, tracked to movie theaters? This is what he said. Not one. Movie theaters aren't just open in the U.S., they have been open around the world and doing a lot of business for several months. We asked our epidemiologists to go review all the global medical literature on where coronavirus outbreaks have occurred. It turns out that not a single reported outbreak of the virus was linked to movie theaters. There are reported cases that are linked to churches, restaurants, other places where people gather, which are open, but not one from movie theaters. We have yet to, we haven't had one yet, and we shared that fact with Governor Cuomo, who of course is the governor of New York City, who's doing the best he can, by the way, in the midst of a pandemic. But we'll open bowling alleys and churches and restaurants and whatever else, but not movie theaters. And yet, with all the stuff out there, because movie theaters took it seriously, they took serious steps to put in strict guidelines and safety procedures that does not eliminate the risk, but it minimizes the risk. You're getting cases reported that have been traced back to all these other places, not one from movie theaters. Which tells me that this whole thing, that what Tenet did to try to come out and get everything going, it didn't have to be for nothing. It didn't have to be for nothing. What Tenet did in cooperation with what the theaters and their safety protocols worked. And it didn't have to be for nothing. And again, Rob, I want to make it really clear here. I'm not blaming anybody specifically because everybody's just trying to figure this out as they go. There is no playbook. There is no guidelines for this whole thing. And everybody's just doing the best they can. But it adds to my frustration as a film fan when you look at the actual data and you realize it could have worked. It could have worked. But now the theater's got to go back into survival mode. They've got to shut back down again. Maybe they'll come back out in December. Maybe not till January, February. Who knows? Again, I think the theater industry will be perfectly fine if they can survive until then. But surviving until then becomes a big question mark. Anyway, Rob, there's a lot of data here. A lot of information, right. A lot of things to look at. You look at this whole situation. What are the first, things that jump out to you?
Well, like you, I've been watching this and reading all about it. And in Deadline this morning, Cineworld's boss, I love his name. His name is Mookie Greidinger.
Yeah, I love his name.
Mookie Greidinger.
Good old Mookie.
He came out and actually made a couple of good points. One, he said that one of the reasons is that Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, like you had pointed out, has made it untenable for them because he declared movie theaters non-essential. And the frustration they're having is that, like you said, why aren't you going to let us open theaters? I mean, we've proven we can do it, and you're still saying no. And so, the governor of New York was not going to let one of the biggest markets open in the United States. And then also he said the straw that broke the camel's back was Bond pulling out because, like you've pointed out, there was no momentum. In the case of opening movie theaters, it should have been, and I don't know how you could have done this, but there should have been a coordinated effort. Like Tenet would come out, then another tentpole movie might come out 3 or 4 weeks later, so you could build that momentum. But I think, John, there is a economic reality to this situation that is inescapable. And that is, in this current climate, even with all of the safety protocols, the theaters are only going to be half full, half capacity from what they normally are. And a movie that's as expensive as Tenet or No Time to Die, which is even more expensive, simply cannot make its money back in the theatrical marketplace. And the studios, by releasing these large movies, are burning up half of their profit. And a $250 million movie like No Time to Die, it can't afford to come out in the current marketplace because it can't recoup. They rely on these movies. No Time to Die is a movie that's going to make, based on the previous performance of the Daniel Craig Bonds, it's going to make an $800 million to $1 billion, maybe even more. And so they're relying on that number to make it worth their while. And if it's not worth their while, if they're only going to get $300 or $400 or $500 million at the box office, it's not enough to be profitable. It's not enough. They need to make that money, and they simply cannot do it in this world climate now. They can't do it. So they're forced, their hand is forced. And I think that movies like Dune, I think unless theaters are in a better situation and more people are going, I don't think we're going to see Dune. And I don't think we're going to see any big tentpole movies come out anytime soon. And it's just a necessity of life right now. They can't afford to release these films.
Yeah, and listen, also, I think we were just talking about recently, Soul was still scheduled to come out in November. Yeah. Disney just recently, just this past week, doubled down, saying, nope, Soul's coming out in theaters. Well, that was before Regal said there ain't going to be any Regal Cinemas. And I'm telling you right now, AMC is going to have to follow suit because they're in bigger financial trouble than any of the rest of them. So they need to go into survival mode too. So that's great that Disney... bravo to Disney for holding their ground, saying, but there's not going to be any theaters for them to open up in. And they go. You know, I was reading this Variety article too, Rob, that was really pointing out that New York isn't just big. Like the importance of New York State being closed down wasn't just because it's got a big part of the potential audience. It's also a trend-setting, pop culturally relevant. It's that and Los Angeles biggest influencer territory there is.
Right.
Like a lot of the taste making is done in New York. And if that's closed and theaters aren't open in Los Angeles either, that throws a lot of wrenches into it as well. And it all comes down to, can they survive until it comes out? Because Rob, I know we've had some debates about this, but I am still really very much of the belief that, let's say February comes around, right? And we've seen the downturn in the virus, all that kind of stuff. The theaters, the studios are ready to release these big films. The things are there. Listen, the part of the reason I'm so confident that the theaters will recover is because right now, 2021 is packed with giant tentpole exciting films. You got a lot of people who haven't been to the theaters in 7 or 8 months. You got all these high profile things. I think you're going to see a very, very virus and global situation notwithstanding, of course, if this allows. But if everything is where it should be, 2021 could be a very good year. Dare I say, better than it would have been before. But the trick is going to be if they can survive that far, if they can hold out. Can they go into hibernation and maintain enough of that bare body fat to keep them alive until that comes? Rob, what are our chances here?
You know, it really depends. I mean, look at our own government. You know, our president now has COVID, and how far into this pandemic are we? I mean, you and I have been sheltering at home since March, and you know, has this virus really abated? And we're going into the winter. I mean, look, I would like to see. There's nothing I'd like more than to go back to movie theaters, but if the United States can't get its act together, we might not see movies opening in April of next year. I think the jury's really still out. I mean, I hope to God we do. And I hope everybody gets better. But even today, like the White House press secretary, she announced that she's positive for COVID. And it's not going anywhere. You know, we haven't done a very good job getting rid of this virus in this country. And that's on us. You know, that's not movie theaters. Movie theaters are doing everything they could to make them safe. But if the audience isn't going to take responsibility for itself, it doesn't matter how clean movie theaters are. We're never going to get our movie theaters back. So I don't know.
The question is for you guys. What do you think about this move by Regal? It sucks. It sucks. But while acknowledging it sucks, I got to say, I completely agree with the move by Cineworld and Regal. You have got to survive until this thing is remedied, and you just got to survive it. If they can survive, they'll be fine. The question is, will they survive? Will AMC follow suit? I have no doubt. I haven't seen any official word from AMC, but I have no doubt. And I think a lot of the other movie theater chains are going to follow suit here with no big movies coming out to entice people or to raise awareness about the theaters even being open. This is a no-win situation right now. It sucks because it didn't have to be. But anyway, guys, what do you think about this? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.